If you open Unreal today for the first time and feel overwhelmed, you are not alone. Blueprints, C++, animations, Niagara, multiplayer, NPC programming. It can feel like you need to learn everything before you can even start. If you are starting game dev in 2026, especially after office hours, you don't need to learn everything immediately. You need a clear starting point and the right order. Today I'll share 5 key subjects in Unreal that will help you build your first game and keep moving forward one step at a time. This is the Game Creator Accelerator and I am Tony Munoz. Like, subscribe, share, comment and ring the bell so you don't miss new strategies to build your path and brand as a game developer for 2026 and technical tutorials to expand your knowledge and create your first video games. Let's get into it. 1. Core Unreal workflow. The first thing to learn is not blueprints, not C++, and not visual effects. The real starting point is understanding how Unreal is structured, because that structure is what everything else sits on top of. When you understand the foundation, the engine stops feeling like a maze of menus and starts feeling like a system you can navigate. That foundation includes the core building blocks you will see in every project: levels, actors, components, and key gameplay classes like game mode. This is the language Unreal uses to organize a game, and learning it early gives you a map. A common trap is jumping straight into tutorials without that map. It works at first because you can copy steps and get something to run, but later everything starts to feel confusing and disconnected. You might build something that works, but you do not really know where to build it, what it depends on, or how it connects to the rest of the project. When something breaks, it becomes hard to troubleshoot because the project feels like a bunch of isolated pieces instead of one coherent structure. That is why this topic matters so much. It is not about memorizing definitions, it is about understanding how Unreal organizes the world. Once you understand that an actor is essentially a container placed in a level, and that components are what give that actor behavior and capabilities, Unreal starts to feel logical instead of overwhelming. You begin to recognize patterns quickly. You know where to look when you want to change behavior, where to look when you want to change rules, and where to look when you want to control what happens when the level starts. This is also where confidence grows, because you stop depending on step-by-step instructions and start making decisions intentionally. Unreal is not just a collection of tools. It is a framework, and when you learn the framework first, everything else becomes easier to place and easier to learn. Now, here's a reflection question, and it's worth pausing on. If someone's dropped you into a random Unreal project today, would you recognize what the major elements are doing and why they exist? Would you be able to quickly identify the level setup, the actors and their components, and the game mode or the core gameplay structure, and then work from there? Or will you immediately feel lost and start searching for next tutorials? Understanding the workflow is the difference between following instructions and actually building confidence. If you want a practical way to study this, I recommend you using 2 AI tools to guide you learning and speed up your understanding. The first is the Unreal AI Assistant included in Unreal Engine 5.7. It is connected to the Unreal documentation, so you can ask direct questions about the structure and get pointed to the right concepts and pages to explore. One of the biggest benefits is that you can ask as many questions as you want, and it's free. I also have a video that shows how to use the AI assistant, and I'll include it in the description. The second tool is ChatGPT. What makes it useful is that you can include screenshots from your projects and ask questions based on what you're actually seeing. And also you can dictate your request to move faster when time is limited. The free version is limited on how many requests you can make, but it can still be incredibly effective for learning and troubleshooting, especially when you want help understanding what you are looking inside the editor. The goal with both tools is not to replace learning. The goal is to shorten the time between confusion and clarity, so you can stay consistent and keep building. 2. Blueprints as a thinking tool. The second subject is blueprints. A lot of people treat blueprints like a beginner shortcut, but that framing misses what makes them powerful. Blueprints are really a way of thinking inside Unreal. They help you see game logic in front of you clearly and immediately. You start understanding how the engine responds to input, how events trigger actions, how conditions shapes outcomes, and how state and flow create gameplay. When you build systems in blueprints, you're learning how games behave, not just memorizing steps in a tutorial. Blueprints are also one of the fastest ways to go from idea to something playable. Even if your long-term goal is to work mostly in C++ later, Blueprints lets you prototype quickly and learn cause and effect inside the game. You press a button, something happens, you change one element, and you immediately see the result. That loop teaches you how to think like a game developer. And there is a reflection point here. Blueprints do not only help you build systems, they reveal how you approach problems, how you debug, and how you structure logic inside Unreal. Because of that, it is usually a mistake to start with C++ in Unreal before you understand blueprints. With blueprints alone, you can build real gameplay and create many types of games without writing a single line in C++. A well-known indie example is Chucho Charles, which started as an independent project. That's important because it proves a point. You can move forward and ship real work without waiting until you feel ready for C++. Then, once you are comfortable with blueprints, bringing in C++ becomes much easier and clearer. You start seeing what belongs in code and what belongs in blueprints. You can keep blueprints for speed and iterations and use C++ for structure, scalability, and cleaner organization. The balance is where Unreal really shines because you're not just choosing one over the other, you're learning how to combine both to get the best results. Inside my mentorship, we focus on blueprints first so you can understand how Unreal works and can start seeing results quickly. From there, depending on the path you want to take and the kind of games you want to build, we guide you into C++ in a structured way so you can confidently use both together as your project grows. 3. C++ Foundation, not Advanced C++. Now let's talk about C++, because this is often the point where people feel stuck or intimidated. A lot of creators reach a moment where they think, if I do not learn C++, I'm not going to be a real game developer. And that pressure creates anxiety before they even begin. The issue is usually not C++ itself. The issue is the belief that you must master everything before you are allowed to use it. That mindset turns learning into a wall instead of a path, and it makes people delay progress for months or even years. A more useful approach is to treat C++ as something you grow into step by step. To begin, you only need the fundamentals, and that lets you understand what you are building and why it works. That means getting comfortable with variables so you can store and change data, functions so you can create actions and reusable behaviors, and classes so you can organize logic in a clean way. Most importantly, in Unreal, you want to understand how C++ connects with blueprints. That bridge is where things start to click, because you can build a system in code, expose it to the editor, and then use blueprints to iterate quickly and test ideas without constantly rewriting everything. In Unreal, C++ is mainly about structure. It helps you organize systems in a way that stay understandable as your project grows. It helps you scale because your logic is easier to maintain, reuse, and also to expand. And it gives your game a solid backbone, especially when your mechanics start interacting with each other and you need consistency across the whole project. A helpful way to picture it is this. C++ is the foundation of a building, and blueprints are the rooms you live and work in every day. You can decorate and rearrange rooms quickly, but if the foundation is weak, the whole building becomes unstable. The good news is that you do not need to know everything about architecture to build a solid foundation. You just need the right fundamentals and clear reasons for use them. Here's a reflection moment that can change how you approach this. Are you avoiding C++ because it feels complex, or because you have not decided yet what you want C++ to do for you in your project? That question matters because the goal is not to collect more syntax. The goal is to have a clear intent. When your intent is clear, learning becomes practical, targeted, and much less overwhelming. And if learning C++ is a goal for you, I made as simple as possible tutorial to start. There is a free C++ course for beginners on this channel, and I'll put the link on the description. It is designed to give you the exact tools and concepts that matter for Unreal, so you can build games without getting lost in unnecessary topics. If you go through that course, you will have more than enough foundations to begin creating in Unreal and to keep leveling up with confidence. You do not need to go further than that to start making real progress. 4. Interaction systems. This is the point where your project starts to feel like an actual game, not just a character moving around in an empty world. What creates that shift is building interaction systems, because interactions is what turns movement into gameplay. It is the difference between watching something happen and feeling like you are causing something to happen. When you begin adding interactions, you start building that loop where the player starts making choices. The world responds and the player immediately feels the result. In Unreal, interaction can take many forms, but the foundations is usually simple. You might use line traces to detect what the player is looking at or aiming at. You use hit detection to register impacts and decisions, like a bullet striking a surface or a sword connecting with an enemy. You use triggers to start events like entering an area that opens a door or activates music. And you add feedback because feedback is what makes an action feel satisfying. Even a small response like a sound, a particle effect, a UI message, or a quick animation can make the game feel alive. This is also where motivation tends to change because progress becomes visible. A character that runs around is a technical milestone, but it still feels like a demo. The moment the character can interact with something, the experience becomes a game. Shooting a target and seeing an impact, picking up an object and watching it as this disappear and gets into your inventory, opening a door and entering a new space, activating a switch that changes the environment. Those are simple mechanics, but they create a strong emotional signal. They tell you, this is working, this is real, this is becoming something, and this is fun. Focusing on interactions early teaches you what makes gameplay feel responsive and satisfying. You start noticing timing, readability, and consistency. You begin to understand what the player expects, what the player notices, and what the player ignores. And for many creators, this is where the fun really starts, because you are no longer just learning on real features, you are building experiences. Now here's a reflection moment worth pausing on. Does your game react to the player, or is the player just moving through an unresponsive world? That question can guide your next steps, because every interaction you finish is proof that you are not longer just collecting knowledge. You are building a real game, one completed response at a time. And if you want a clear path that you can follow week by week, there is a full project on this channel you can learn from free, as well as the C++ course. We're building a third-person shooter from scratch called Mad Gameverse, and it brings together everything we talked about so far. The Unreal workflow, blueprints, C++, and interaction systems, all inside one complete project. Watching it develop over time helps you connect the dots, because you see how each mechanic fits into a bigger structure instead of learning everything in isolation. I'll link the full playlist in the description so you can start from the beginning and follow along. 5. Finishing small mechanics for a big project. This last point is the one that tends to make the biggest difference over the long term, especially if you have a big vision for your game. It's the ability to finish small mechanics for a big project. A lot of people assume the main challenge is that their game dream is too ambitious, but the more common problem is much simpler. Progress stalls because nothing reaches the finish line. The project gets restarted, the engine gets changed, a new tutorial playlist appears, and suddenly weeks or months go by without anything truly completed and integrated into the game. A stronger approach is to stop thinking in terms of building the whole game and start thinking in terms of building mechanics. Pick one mechanic that matters, build it until it works, and integrate it into the project so it becomes part of your foundation. That mechanic might be shooting, reloading, interacting, taking damage, opening doors, a simple AI reaction, or a basic inventory. The point is not that the mechanic is huge. The point is that it is finished, working and connected to the rest of the game. Then you repeat the process with the next mechanic. This is how large games actually get made. They are not created in one big push. They are built from completed systems stacked together over time. Finishing small mechanics creates something powerful: momentum. It builds confidence because you can point to real progress, not just learning. It also builds clarity because each finished piece teaches you what your game needs next and what you can postpone. And little by little, the big project starts moving forward in a way that feels sustainable, even if you're building after office hours. Now, I want you to sit with a few questions because these are the kinds of questions that change your direction. Think about your last 3 games ideas. How many of them truly moved forward in a measurable way with finished mechanics that stayed in the project and that you controlled and learned deeply? And if you find yourself restarting often, ask yourself why. Are you restarting because you are improving and making smarter decisions? Or are you restarting because finishing feels unreachable? Big projects do not fail simply because they are big. They fail when the small pieces never get finished, and the creator never builds the habit of completing what matters most, completing the next mechanic and moving to the next one. So if you're thinking about starting game development in 2026, here's a practical way to approach it without getting overwhelmed. Focus on building a foundation that makes everything else easier. Learn how Unreal is structured so you understand where things live and how they connect. Use blueprints to think in systems and to build real gameplay quickly. Introduce C++ to give your project a structure and scalability as it grows. Build interaction early so your project feels like a game, not just a technical demo. And most importantly, develop the habit of finishing small mechanics that serve a bigger vision, because that is how big projects move forward, one step at a time. What we covered in this video is mainly the technical side, the pieces that help you take your first steps and start building with confidence. But if you want to build a strong path as a game developer, especially if your goal includes independence, there is another key element that matters just as much: your social media presence. Sharing consistently, being visible, and learning how to communicate your progress in a way that attracts the right people over time. When you combine building with sharing, you don't just develop skills, you also build opportunities, relationships, and a community that grows with you. That is exactly what we do inside the Game Creator Accelerator Lifetime Mentorship. We focus on technical foundation so you can keep improving your ability to create, but we also guide you through the strategies to build your presence so you can create a long-term path in the industry. If you want to learn more, visit woolen.com and set a time to chat with me one-on-one. We'll look at where you are right now, what you want to achieve, and together we'll see if the GCA can help you take the next step with clarity and direction. And as a final reflection, game development isn't only about Unreal Engine. It is about how you approach progress, consistency, and visibility. The question isn't, can I do this? The real question is, what I'm willing to commit to finishing. And until next time, keep creating, keep sharing, and most importantly, keep dreaming big. I'll see you soon, my fellow creators.